Hello everyone. First of all, it's a pleasure to be here, and thanks for having me. And I'll thank everyone for joining in turn. So, the so first of all, if there's an issue regarding the video, if you find that it's helpful for you to watch it in landscape mode, please do that. It might be preferable if people watch it in landscape mode rather than portrait. Okay, so the topic as was mentioned before, it's 3 men and a cake. So of course there's going to be 3 men, there's going to be a cake, and we're going to do something about it. So let's start off. Let's name 3 people. So for example, let's take Apurva, let's take Shushim, let's take Ritam. 3 people, Apurva, Shushim and Ritam. Apurva, Shushim and Ritam. And this talk is going to be a bit mathematical, so if you know the age-old adage of mathematicians and physicists solving spherical chickens in vacuum, then you wouldn't mind me if I'm to approximate the cake as a rectangle. Okay, so we are going to work with rectangular cakes, and while we are bordering on the ludicrous, why not just assume that the cake is going to be cut perpendicularly? So Apurva, Shushim and Ritam decide to have a cake for dessert, let's say, and the thing is, the cake is going to be cut vertically, and they're going to be having a piece each. So, and I'm going to assume that the cake is going to be cut perpendicularly. So it's going to be cut perpendicularly. So one piece is going to be for Apurva, one piece is going to be for Ritam, and one for Shushim. Right. Next. So what we are going to look to do is, we are going to look to have some kind of an NV-free division. Okay, and I'm going to come to what I mean exactly by an NV-free division. But here's the idea. So Apurva is going to have a piece, Ritam is going to have a piece, and Shushim is going to have a piece, and they are going to each have their preferences regarding their piece. So we are going to see if we can divide the cake in such a way such that Apurva, Shushim and Ritam each feels that their piece is no worse than the others. So they are going to be like, okay, fine, I've got a piece, but it's as good as what any others have got. Okay, great. Now we are going to have some mild assumptions. We're going to see what those assumptions are, and then we are going to see that whether it's possible to divide the cake or not. So by possible, I mean precisely that there's going to be a division of the cake that is going to be NV free. I'm not saying or I'm not claiming that it's possible to divide this cake in such a way, in such an NV free way, in practice, in reality. No. It doesn't matter what reality is. We are just going to show that it's possible mathematically. That's the idea. So possible mathematically, right? All right, we are going to come to this later. Okay, before that, know about triangles. Hello. Okay, I think there was a network issue for a second. Am I audible? If kindly you can tell me if I'm audible. I'm back. I think there was a network issue for a second. Just tell me if I'm audible or not once again. Am I audible? Okay, great. Right, here we go. So we have a triangle. Everyone knows what a triangle is, and we have 3 vertices. Let's label them 1, 2 and 3. And what we are going to look to do is we are going to look to divide the interior part of the triangle into smaller triangles. Let's just do that. Okay, let's just divide it into smaller triangles. Great. Fine, fair enough, this works. Now, although it might not look like it, you are supposed to assume that this is an arbitrary division. Now, here's the rules of the game. On the side 1, 2, you can only label these vertices by the by the labels 1 and 2. So let's just label both of them as 1. Similarly, on the side 1 and 3, you can label only with 1 and 3. So I'm going to label one of them with 1 and one of them with 3. And similarly, on the side 2 and 3, I'm going to label one of them with 3 and one of them with 2. So you can only label with 2 and 3. And in the interior of the triangle, you can label with anything you want. So I'm going to just put one or two more baby triangles over here. Okay, so you can label with anything you want. So let me label one of them with 1, the second one with 1, and the third one with 3. Great. Now, here's the claim. The claim is such a labeling produces a 1, 2, 3 triangle. So here's, for example, a 1, 2, 3 triangle. Great. So first of all, this kind of a labeling is what is called a Sperner labeling, and I might be getting the pronunciation wrong over here. I'm pretty sure Samir will tell you what the correct pronunciation is. Anyway, so the Sperner labeling is done by having the labels 1 and 2 on the side 1, 2, the labels 1 and 3 on the side 1, 3, and the labels 2 and 3 on the side 2, 3, whereas in the interior you can mark with anything. Great. So we are supposed to show okay, I believe the text is not legible. Hold on a second. Is the text legible now? Is the text legible now? Can someone tell me if the text is legible? Now I have zoomed in. Can you tell me if the text is legible or not? Okay, thank you. So the claim is such a labeling will produce a 1, 2, 3 triangle. All right. So the idea behind showing this is to prove that the number of 1, 2, 3, okay, 1, 2, 3 triangles means I'm precisely looking at baby triangles, at all these baby triangles. I'm not looking at the outer triangle, and I'm not claiming that, I'm not making this claim about the outer 1, 2, 3 triangle. I'm just claiming this about the baby triangles that are present within. So what we are going to show is, we are going to show that the number of baby 1, 2, 3 triangles, number of baby 1, 2, 3 triangles is odd. Okay, so I'm pretty sure everyone knows that the smallest odd number is 1. So you're at least guaranteed of a single 1, 2, 3 triangle. Okay. So how are we going to do this? We are going to do this the following way. Okay. We are going to do this by a counting argument. So what do we mean by a counting argument? Let's say Q is the number of 1, 1, 2 plus number of 1, 2, 2 triangles. Okay, so here's a 1, 1, 2 triangle. A 1, 1, 2 triangle over here would be, okay, I don't think I have a 1, 1, 2 triangle. So in general, suppose for a general triangulation, let's say I have triangulated it in a certain way, and let's say I have a 1, 1, 2 triangle over here, and let's say I have a 1, 2, 2 triangle over here. So both of these triangles are going to go in the evaluation of Q. Okay, right. So both of these kinds of triangles are going to go in the evaluation of Q. Now I'm going to let R denote the number of 1, 2, 3 triangles. So a priori I'm not making an assumption on R. I can assume it may be 0 or it may not be 0. At any rate, I'm assuming that, so any triangle of the form 1, 2, 3 is going to go in the evaluation of R. So I'm not making any a priori assumptions on R. Okay, great. Now, let's look at a triangle in Q. So a triangle in Q is going to be like this. This is going to be a 1, there's going to be a 1, there's going to be a 2, and there's going to be a 1, 2, 2. There are two possible triangles of this form. Now notice that what we are looking to do over here is we are going to look to count the number of 1, 2 edges. Okay, right, we are going to count the number of 1, 2 edges. So each of these 1, 1, 1, 2 or 1, 2, 2 triangles produce exactly two 1, 2 edges. So here's a 1, 2 edge for a 1, 1, 2 triangle, here's another, and similarly for the 1, 2, 2 triangle there are two of these. Right, next, so if there are Q number of 1, 1, 2 plus 1, 2, 2 triangles that we have mentioned, then the total number of 1, 2 edges coming from Q is precisely twice Q. And on the other hand, if I have a 1, 2, 3 triangle coming from R, then it precisely contributes a single edge. So I have twice Q plus R being the total number of 1, 2 edges. So this is the total number of 1, 2 edges. Now how have we counted the 1, 2 edges? Let me remind you, we have counted the 1, 2 edges by moving over all of the baby triangles. Okay, we have counted the 1, 2 edges by moving over all the baby triangles. So let's just have X denote the number of 1, 2 edges that are in the interior. Okay, so X is the number of 1, 2 edges that are present in the interior of the triangle. So for example, this edge will contribute to X, whereas this edge will not contribute to X because it's on the boundary. Okay, and we are going to let Y be the 1, 2 edges that are in the boundary. Okay, so for example, this edge will contribute to Y, on the other hand this edge will contribute to Y, on the other hand this edge will not contribute to Y. Okay, great. Now recall that we have counted the total number of 1, 2 edges by going all over the baby triangles. Okay, so if I have a baby triangle over here, so for example this is a baby triangle, so suppose that the 1, 2 edge of this baby triangle lies in the interior. Now if it lies in the interior, there is some other triangle that shares this edge with this triangle. So there is some other triangle that I have mentioned that I have drawn with the dashed lines that shares this particular edge with this triangle, right? So when I have counted the 1, 2 edges by going over the baby triangles, I have basically counted each interior edge twice. So 2Q plus R is precisely 2X plus something. I haven't mentioned the boundary triangles yet, boundary 1, 2 edges yet. So if there's a boundary 1, 2 edge, it's shared precisely by one triangle. So I just mentioned Y. So I mean there's nothing to multiply Y with. It's just 1 because each 1, 2 edge on the boundary is shared precisely by one triangle. Now here's the idea. 2Q plus R is equal to 2X plus Y. So I have R equals twice X minus Q plus Y. Now we are going to make an argument that Y is odd. And to understand the argument, let's look at this 1, 2 edge. This side 1, 2. Okay, so here I have a side 1, 2. So I have this 1 over here and I have a 2 over here. Now imagine that 1 represents a light switch being off and 2 represents a light switch being on. And there's going to be some 1s and 2s over here. Okay, right? And so each 1, 2 represents a switch, represents the switching of the light from off to on. If I recall correctly, I mentioned 1 is off. I might just as well write this down, and 2 is on. Okay, so each 1, 2 transition represents the switching from off to on, and each 2-1. Hello. I think we just paused out at some point. Okay. Right. So at the end of the day, the light has to be switched on, right? So if you switch it, if you press the switch an even number of times, then of course you're going to go from off to off, right back at it. I mean, you can just take a light switch and try this out. And the other argument to show this is that every pair of switchings from off to on and on to off contributes exactly 2 times the switch being pressed. So if you have an even number of switchings, you're going to have every pairs off to on and on to off, and then they're going to cancel out and the light is going to be back to off. So there has to be an odd number of switchings from 1 to 2 and 2 to 1, which brings us to the fact that Y is odd, right? Which brings us to the fact that Y is odd. So R is basically, this is a multiple of 2, so this is even plus an odd number, and which we all know is odd. Great, R is odd. But what was R? R was precisely the number of 1, 2, 3 triangles. So we have shown that the number of 1, 2, 3 triangles is odd, which means that it has to be at least 1. So there is at least 1, 1, 2, 3 baby triangle. Okay. Great. Next. So we have shown something about triangles, and it's pretty much of a cute little stuff. So how are we going to use this cuteness to show what we started out with, that it's possible to have an envy-free division of a cake between the 3 friends Apurva, Shushim and Ritam. So here's the cake again. Okay, and let's say it has some length L. So here are 3 divisions. Let's say here are 3 possible divisions. This is X, this is Y, and this is Z. All right. Now we have X plus Y plus Z equals L. So I'm going to scale my units such that L is 1. So I can write X plus Y plus Z equals 1. Okay. Right. This means I am looking at, and of course we have X, Y, Z are all non-negative. So this means we have 3 numbers that add up to 1 that are all non-negative. If you know a bit of coordinate geometry, the moment you look at this, you should be able to say that this describes a plane. With this not only describes a plane, it also describes a plane with the intercepts along the axis being unit. So if I write this as X, Y and Z axis, then the intercepts are precisely of unit length. Okay. Great. And why have I written a triangle over here? I mean, all of them have to be non-negative. So if either of them exceed 1, then at least one of them must be negative. So if I have X plus Y plus Z adding up to 1, then if any of the quantities exceed 1, then one of them has to be negative, which means that this plane must be bounded in the positive octant, right? And this gives us an equilateral triangle. It's pretty important that this triangle is equilateral for what we are going to do next. So what does this triangle represent? Let's recall. This triangle represents all the possible ways to cut the cake such that the sum of the pieces add up, the lengths of the pieces add up to the whole cake, to give the whole cake. All right. Now, here's what we're going to do. We are going to take this equilateral triangle. We're going to draw it separately. Okay. Great. And we are going to divide it into smaller equilateral triangles, all of which have the same area. So let's just do that. So I'm assuming all, other than the faults in the drawing, I'm assuming that all of the smaller equilateral triangles have the same area. And we are going to give a labeling on this equilateral triangle. And this need not be a Sperner labeling. We're going to simply give it a labeling. So let's just label the edge vertices A, B, and C, A, S, and R. Okay. So this labeling corresponds to the three people over here, Apurva, Shushim, and Ritam. So A, S, and R. And the labeling is such that each of these baby triangles have vertices labeled differently. Okay. Okay. Now, I can show you that this kind of a labeling, the moment I have drawn A, S, and R, I can show you that this kind of a labeling will not satisfy. Here's an example. If I have to label it differently, of course I'm going to have to label these two vertices differently. So one of them has to be S and one of them has to have to be R. Then one of these has to be A, because if this is A and R, this R and S, one of this has to be A, which means this is S, which means this is A. Okay, and we must label this with R, which means this has to be this, but if this is R and S, this has to be A. So this triangle has vertices labeled the same. So this kind of a labeling will not, I mean if I just start with labeling these vertices as A, S, and R, this is not going to work out. Okay. So what we are going to do is we are going to label it using a different kind of an algorithm. Okay. This is how I'm going to label it. I'm going to start with A. I'm going to put an S over here, put an R over here, and put an A over here. On the other side, if I have marked it A and S, I'm going to mark this as R. Okay. Then I'm going to mark this as S. Then I'm going to mark this as A. Okay. And the center, in the center one, since these are R and S and these are R and S, the center one has to be A, which means this one has to be S and this one has to be R. Fine. Pretty good. Now, this is what we are going to do next. We are going to make, I remember when I told you that there's going to be some assumptions on the cake cutting. So the assumptions are the following. Apurva, Shushim, and Ritam are all hungry. So everyone would prefer to have a piece rather than not having a piece. The second assumption is Apurva and Shushim and Ritam's choices are independent. Okay. Okay. I hear a comment that can you describe why you are naming this way or labeling this way? Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna come to this why I'm naming and labeling this particular way. This will be evident in a while. So just hold your horses for the moment. Okay. So Apurva, Shushim, and Ritam all have independent choices. So Apurva is not going to look at Shushim's cake and be like, oh damn, Shushim chose this cake and that is precisely the reason why I want to have that. No. That's not allowed. Each of them can have their own preferences and that is independent of the others. The preferences can overlap, but Apurva's preference is not dependent on what Shushim chooses. Okay, fine. Now, remember when I told you that this triangle is precisely this triangle that I have taken out of supposedly this coordinate axis and put it on the paper. So now I recall that this, so suppose one of the vertex, so this is the point 1, 0, 0, let's say. So one of the vertex I label with 1, 0, 0. One of the vertex I label with 0, 1, 0 and the other with 0, 0, 1. Great. Now here's what we are going to do. We are going to look at the first vertex 1, 0, 0 and we see that this is labeled A for our dear friend Apurva. So we go to Apurva and I ask him, yo, if the cake was to be if we are supposed to cut the cake with the lengths of the pieces being represented by the vertex, which piece would you choose? So here's the question more precisely. If we were to cut the cake such that x equal to 1, y equal to 0, z equal to 0, which piece would you choose? Of course, Apurva would choose the first piece because the first piece is the y and z pieces are basically of 0 lengths. They don't exist. And Apurva is hungry. So you definitely choose the first piece, right? So here's the second. Let me draw a second triangle. Okay. Oops. I messed up a bit. Right. So Apurva definitely chooses the first piece. So I'm going to label this with a 1. Okay. Over here, Apurva gets to choose again. But now, the second piece is the only one that has a length. So he chooses the second piece over here. In the third vertex, similarly, he chooses the third piece. Right? What about along this side? Along this side, there are, so this side basically corresponds to, so along the y-axis you have this point 0, 1, 0, and over here you have 0, 0, 1, right? So this side corresponds to all the points along this line, right? All the points along this line. Okay. So the next vertex along this side belongs to Shushim, and Shushim looks at it. So we go and ask Shushim, which piece would you choose? So here's, for example, the second vertex. Shushim looks at it. He sees that there are two non-negative quantities x, y, and there's a third vertex has a coordinate 0. So he can choose either the first piece or the second piece, right? Which means regardless of what he chooses, it's either going to be a 1 or it's going to be a 2. So in this labeling, the second vertex is either going to be a 1 or it's going to be a 2. So let's just say he chooses 1 again, the first piece again. Then when I go into the third vertex, I ask Ritam, which piece would you want? Ritam looks at it. There are two other points, let's say x prime and y prime and 0. Ritam looks at it. He again sees that the third coordinate is 0. So he can't choose the last piece. So he again chooses either the first or the second one. Let's say he chooses the second one. Okay. If you can understand the flow of the argument, you would know that on the other side, equally, we could have a choice. So this side, for example, represents this particular side. So over here, and if I ask Ritam his choice over here, he will choose either. Yeah, he can choose either the first piece or the third piece as we go along this side, right? This means that if the choice is between the so this means any vertex occurring along this side can be labeled only by a 1 or a 3. Great. So any vertex is labeled by a 1 or a 3. Let's say Ritam chooses the first one and Shushim chooses the first one. Similarly, any vertex occurring along this side can only be labeled with a 2 or a 3, right? So I can only have labels 2 or a 3. Let's say I have a 3 and a 2 corresponding to Shushim's and Ritam's choice. What about the central vertex? So I go to the central vertex. I see it belongs to Apurva. So I ask Apurva, which piece will you have? And he can choose any one of them. It's his choice. So let's say he chooses the second one. Great. But when I have the corresponding labeling to this is a Sperner labeling. So we have a labeling over here, and we have a corresponding labeling which is a Sperner labeling, which means there's going to be a triangle which has 3 vertices labeled differently. So there's going to be a 1, 2, 3 triangle over here. So let's say here is a 1, 2, 3 triangle. Okay. But recall that when we did this labeling, so this triangle, so here's our 1, 2, 3 triangle. But recall that when we did this labeling, we did it in such a way that all the 3 edges, all the 3 vertices of all of the baby triangles were labeled differently. So for example, in this case, this one, the vertex 1 belongs to Shushim, the vertex 2 belongs to Ritam, and the vertex 3 belongs to Apurva. But now, we asked at each point, we took in what they would prefer, right? So each gets their preferred pieces. And the division is made in such a way, since we asked their preferred pieces, the division is made in such a way that no one feels that the other is significantly better than what they have. Fuzziness in the argument. The fuzziness in the argument is produced by the fact that the way we have constructed these triangles, so I have not considered all the points that are lying between these 2 points. So for example, in the original figure, I have not considered points between, let's say, a vertex and the next point, a vertex of the bigger triangle and a subvertex of a baby triangle. Right. So how do we eliminate that? We eliminate that by constructing, so we eliminate that by taking triangles, baby triangles of smaller and smaller areas. So if we are to take baby triangles of smaller and smaller areas, so for example, we could take baby triangles that have a much smaller area, okay, and we could divide it in a similar fashion. So we could take baby triangles of smaller and smaller areas. So what's going to happen is each of these 1, 2, 3 triangles are going to have smaller and smaller areas. So here's a little example. Okay, I think I'll be able to zoom out. Okay, right. So this is for example a printed figure where here, for example, I had, let's see, I had 3 rows over here. I had 3 rows of triangles. Over here I have taken 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 rows. Okay. So if I were to superpose this, back into a triangle of this area, then I would get much smaller triangles. And that would mean, so if I keep doing this, if I keep taking smaller and smaller triangles, the areas of the baby triangles would eventually converge to a point, right? So smaller triangles, hold on a second, yeah. Smaller subdivisions implies areas of baby triangles converge to a point. If you're familiar with the concept of limits, you would be able to make precise the kind of argument I'm trying to make over here. The kind of argument I am trying to make over here is that as I take smaller triangles, each of the area of the baby area of the baby triangles go to 0, in which case the baby triangles converge to in the limiting case, the baby triangles converge to a point. So a vague idea of limits would still help you, I guess, in understanding this. Anyway, if it converges, so under this kind of a convergence, what we get is that there's a particular point over here, let's say, so there's going to be a particular point over here. So this is the point, let's say, where the areas of the baby triangles converge to. If this is the point where the areas of the baby triangles converge to, then at this point I have a subdivision that removes the fuzziness that I had in the initial subdivision. So that removes the fuzziness that I, for example, had in such a kind of a subdivision. So this subdivision exactly corresponds to an envy-free division of the cake. Now, this kind of an argument is impractical because of course you are not going to wait so long to have a cake, right? But this is the kind of arguments you do in order to show that certain things exist. I should remind you that the claim that we made over here, that this kind of a labeling produces a triangle, a Sperner labeling produces a 1, 2, 3 triangle. This is basically known as this is a famous result known as Sperner's lemma. And you can do it for higher dimensional analogues of triangles. And if you do it for higher dimensional analogues of triangles, you will be able to show that this envy-free division extends to n people as well, right? It's also worth mentioning that Sperner's lemma has a corresponding analog in topology, and that analog is known as the Brouwer's fixed point theorem. So very briefly, if I talk in terms of triangles, Brouwer's fixed point theorem states if I have a triangle, continuous function from this triangle to another triangle. So this is a continuous function from a triangle to a triangle. If I have a continuous function from a triangle, then there is a fixed point. A fixed point is such a point which satisfies f of x equal to x. If you're not aware of what continuous functions are, here's a brief intro to continuous functions. So if I have a triangle and another triangle and I have a function connecting both of them, then this triangle would appear as some subset of the second triangle. If f is continuous, what we mean by that is, suppose I take a point and I take any sequence of points that come really close, let's call it P. F sends this point P to some point in the subset. So this is, let's say, f of P, and f is going to send all of these points to some points over here. And if f is continuous, then the images of all of these points in the sequence that approaches P, the images of all of these points approach Fp. So the image of the sequence approaches Fp. This is a very rough definition of continuity. It's pretty rough, it's not rigorous, and I'll admit that, but to some extent I have to let go of rigor in favor of intuition. Anyway, moving ahead. So a continuous function from a triangle to a triangle has a fixed point, and this is immensely beautiful applications. So for example, if you're aware of game theory and the Nash equilibrium theorem, so this Nobel laureate John Nash, I hope you have heard of him. If you have not heard of him, you should definitely watch The Beautiful Mind. So John Nash came up with the Nash equilibrium theorem back in sometime around 1930s, I guess, and that was the theorem that won him that earned him the Nobel Prize. So it turns out that Brouwer's fixed point theorem, so this is known as Brouwer's fixed point theorem. Brouwer's fixed point theorem. So Brouwer's fixed point theorem is logically equivalent to the Nash equilibrium theorem. It also turns out that Brouwer's fixed point theorem is logically equivalent to Sperner's lemma. So we have a very beautiful analog of the Nash equilibrium in terms of discrete combinatorics. So I guess I'm probably out of time, so I'll end it over here. And if you have any questions, feel free to fire away. If you have any questions, feel free to fire away, or you can tell me if there are no questions. Should I go offline? Is it fine? Do we not have any questions anymore? Anyway, I'll end it over here. If you have any questions, you're free to contact me at any time. Thank you so much and have a nice day. Okay, can you write down the name of the theorem properly due to bad connection or not? Yeah, the theorem is known as Sperner's lemma. So I'm going to write this result. I'll write it down for you. So the theorem is known as Sperner's lemma. That we proved regarding triangles, and this is logically equivalent to Brouwer's fixed point theorem, and this in turn is logically equivalent to the Nash equilibrium. So there are very beautiful videos on YouTube explaining Nash equilibrium very intuitively. You should definitely check that. For Sperner's lemma and an analog of the cake cutting problem, there's a very beautiful video by Mathologer on YouTube. So this is Mathologer. This is in YouTube. So you should definitely check out Mathologer's video. The video is titled, it's probably titled the rental harmony problem. Yeah, the video is titled the rental harmony problem, and you should definitely see this. Check this out. It's worth it. Also, if you want to check out other examples of cake cutting, you can check out a video on number file.